Hey, Alan, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Jeff. I'm doing great.
How was your weekend?
It was good. We had our annual, so our churches, we celebrate our anniversary every year. Before we do like a big, go someplace to a park or someplace and have service, and then we do baptisms. And so, had 10 people get baptized yesterday. It was a good day.
Wow, that's awesome, man. That's always a fun celebration.
Yep.
That is cool. And we had, so we were supposed to go camping this weekend. Jess and I and the kids were going to get away. And then actually at our church, there was a bunch of service opportunities. And we were like, well, let's, we can go camping another weekend. So as you know, but I bet a lot of you don't know, I live in Northwest Arkansas, which is the home of Walmart's corporate office. Our downtown is extremely, extremely sought after for real estate. So like everybody wants to buy a house and renovate into these cool little builds downtown in this like arts and entertainment district. Well, they had a concert series this weekend called Home Sweet Home. And the concept was they had like 10 or 15 really cool houses downtown open up their doors for artists to come perform in Friday evening. And then there was like a headliner at this really cool music venue downtown that everybody would walk to. So Jess and I, my wife, we volunteered to staff one of the houses, right? Be like the ticket takers, make sure the artists were taken care of, work the bar inside the house, all that stuff. Well, we didn't realize this, but as people were coming into the house, they just kind of assumed it was our house. And this is like, this is like a $2.5 million house, right? And we're like, no, we're just facilitators. This isn't actually Dave and Kate over there. That's their house. And the second person, oh, we love your house. No. Third person, we love your house. Like it was easier just to say, oh, thank you, right?
Yeah.
And then by the fifth person, we love your house. Like, yeah, thank you. When we picked out the backsplash, we really wanted to compliment the wall color in the living room. So we got to pretend for a few moments, and then Saturday, our church hosted a huge foster care program called NWA Hope, and so we had over 500 foster families and their kids in the church, and we're trying to make sure that there's not a child in Northwest Arkansas that doesn't have a safe place to sleep at night. So it was cool weekend.
Awesome.
Cool weekend. Hey, we have a special guest who is standing by waiting for us to let him in. I want to introduce you and everybody else to my dear friend, Jim Hocking.
Yeah.
Who goes by the nickname Indiana Jim. And there's two reasons for that. One, because he's in Indiana, so that's kind of helpful. But if you've noticed, he has a signature accessory. Some people might say, I don't remember if Indiana Jones wore glasses.
Because I don't have any hair.
Oh, the hat. That's what the hat. Yeah. So, Alan, meet my good friend Jim Hocking. Jim, this is my partner and mentor and trusted brother, Alan Ray.
How you doing, Jim?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Alan. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Okay. Thank you so much for just joining us today. I hope you have your coffee. I have mine.
I have my Air Energy. This is the Canary Pilot.
And I have my Water for Good mug.
Oh, the Canary Pilot 2019.
2019.
Nice.
I remember when the crew came back with those and I didn't have one. And I was
Did you get one?
No, but
you never got one?
No, but on my next trip out, I got a Trailblazer Yeti. I got the Trailblazer Project Yeti mug, or not mug, but the thermos, and I brought that back. And then Josh and Ken were like really upset. So,
but you never got the Canary. Did you get the jacket?
No, I didn't get any of that stuff.
Are you serious?
This is what happens to the sales department at places.
Yeah. I feel bad. You know what I'm going to do? Here's what I'm going to do, Jeff. I'm going to send you my Canary Pilot jacket.
Oh, don't do that.
I'll get it one next time I'm there. I'm going over to Pennsylvania, so I'll get him one and bring it back.
Oh, steal one. Jess makes fun of me because she says I have more jackets than she does already. And
so you're going to be in trouble. Okay, that's fine.
I'll send you my coffee mug, slightly used.
There we go. I like it. All right.
Every day since 2019, pretty much. So
I want to give a little backstory on how I got to know Jim, and then I want to let just Jim. We want to hear your story. It's fascinating. I think everybody's gonna really enjoy it. So I forget even where or how. Actually, no, I do. So Living Water International every year does a kind of like a gala banquet event. And I remember a long time ago, early on in the socials, seeing this really weird dinner where a bunch of people carried these yellow like jerry cans in to dinner. And it caught my eyes like, what on earth is this? Right. Jim, what is that? Am I describing that right? I'm pretty sure
I
you're
think so. Yep.
Okay.
I do. Yeah.
And so Living Water's out of Houston. And they basically they exist to try to eradicate water poverty. And I'd never heard the term water poverty before, but I got hit with a lot of facts as soon as I started to research what is water poverty, and said, "Oh my goodness, this is crazy." Yeah. Something that I've always taken for granted, right? You turn on a tap and water comes out, and not only does it come out, but you can drink it and not get sick from it. So anyway, I went to some of the folks that we worked with in our church, our youth group, and said, "Hey, we should do a fundraiser and let's try to dig a well." And so what's the average distance that somebody hauls water, Jim?
A mile.
A mile. Okay.
So about kilometer and a half.
Kilometer and a half. And is that out and back?
Well, that's out and back.
Okay.
So it's 3 kilometers usually. So that's about a mile and a half.
Yeah. So that's what we did as a youth group. Jess and I were leaders, and even our kids. Eli at the time was like 7. That would have made Becca 5. Each one of us carried 5 gallons of water. Or no, I'm sorry, 3 gallons of water. And the kids carried what they wanted to carry, of course. But the youth did that, and it was a reality check at the end of a mile and a half. Like, what do you mean this is everybody's, this is a
reality,
world's daily reality?
Yeah.
And then we said, okay, well, what if we just left 5 jugs of water at the back of our property line for a weekend? And so anytime we needed to use water, we just had to walk out the back door, slight inconvenience, walk to the fence, get water, come back. And even that was so disruptive in our life. And so we said, so we raised about $15,000 as a group, kind of brought it to the church and said, hey, here, we want to dig a well. And somebody in our church said, hey, do you know Jim Hocking by chance? And it's like, no. I said, well, within the church family, there's a fellow named Jim Hocking and they went into Water for Good. And that's how I first learned about Water for Good. And Jim just happened to be coming to speak actually at our church within the next 6 months. And that's the first time I met you, Jim, if I'm not mistaken. You were doing you taught in the adult Sunday school class and maybe presented in front of the church for 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my usual MO. I like ABF's Sunday school classes better because there's more interaction. Otherwise, I'm just speaking and anybody that has questions, they have to see me afterwards. So I really like the ABFs, the Sunday school, because then as you're talking, people raise questions. You can actually help people understand what exactly you're talking about, because people don't get it. They haven't, done what you did, put the 5-gallon jugs at the back of their property. That's a real reality check. And if you need a drink of water, if you want to take a bath, if you want to do anything, you have to go get the water first. That really helps people understand a whole lot better. So yeah, I remember meeting you, and since then you've been a strong supporter, and I'm just glad I met you.
Do you remember the second time we met?
No.
Okay, that's okay. You're all over the place, shaking lots of hands, kissing lots of babies. So Alan, I don't think I've even told you this story, Alan. There's over 1.5 million people flying domestically in the United States every day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Within 30 days of me meeting Jim the first time, I'm in the Raleigh-Durham airport waiting for a connection
Oh, I do remember this.
and the incoming plane was delayed coming in. And so I was just standing at the gate, plane lands, plane deboards. And all of a sudden I see a guy walking off the plane with a black cowboy hat. I'm like, what? Now, I don't ever wait by gates. I'm one of those, if I'm the last person on the plane, then I feel like I've won because I don't want to be on an airplane any longer than I have to be. But I happened to be first in line at the gate, and Jim and I ran into each other within 30 days at the Raleigh-Durham airport at gate, whatever. And you will never convince me that there's any actual probable chance that can occur statistically, right? Like,
yeah,
that's ridiculous. And he looked at me and I was like, okay, so we've got to do something together. This has got to be like,
What year was that?
This
5-6 years ago, probably.
At least 6 years ago. Yeah.
So that was kind of like
was that before my strokes?
Yeah.
Yep. So that's right. Yeah. Because my strokes were 6 years ago. So it was right before that.
Okay.
I had a little issue, but we got it taken care of. I'm okay.
So tell us your story, Jim. Where'd you grow up? Where were you born? Walk us through kind of how Water for Good, became a reality.
Okay. So I grew up in the Central African Republic, but was born in Warsaw, Indiana. Now, there is another Warsaw, and I ran into this problem once when somebody said, you were born in Warsaw, Poland? I go, no, I was born in Warsaw, Indiana. It is Kosciuszko County, who is a Polish general that fought in the Civil War, but basically born in Warsaw, Indiana. And then at 18 months old, my mom and dad were headed to Africa, and they did not ask me. They just took me on the plane, and my brother David was born in France. They spent 18 months in France learning French. Evidently, I don't know this for a fact, but evidently, because I don't speak it that well, I learned French really well, better than my parents. And I've got lots of stories about that too. But then we went on to Africa, and the second language that I learned was Sango, which I spoke better than French. So then I spent the next, 17, almost 18 years in Africa.
Okay. And
grew up, went to high school in Congo because there was no high school in Central Africa. Missionaries they either had to go home or just send their kids home and go to school in the States. So then my brother, David, had kidney problems, and he had these all along. We didn't know what they were, but all of a sudden he had serious problems. So mom and dad brought us all home. And then my mother and father told me I was going to stay with David. I wasn't going to return to finish high school in Congo. I was going to finish high school in California, and I was not a happy camper.
Why is that?
I love Africa. I don't love California. If you've been in California,
I live in California, by the way.
Okay, it's yeah.
I understand what you're saying. I get it.
And my brother lives there now. My younger brother Tom is a pastor there in Long Beach, Bellflower, California. Mm-hmm. And my brother Dan is in New York, and my brother David was in Colorado. He moved to Colorado after California. And so we were kind of spread out. But then after that, I went to Grace College. So I finished high school, went to Grace College, met my wife. 3.5 years later, we both graduated. We took summer school and winter ends and finished early so we could get married, because our parents, both sets of parents, said, can't get married until you graduate. So we just graduated early. We'll figure this out. So in 76, we got married on December 31st. Not the best time to get married. You can't find a place open on the 1st of January. Let me tell you, there's not a place open. So on our honeymoon evening, we went and on our way down to Florida. The next morning, we could not find a place to eat. We finally ate at a McDonald's. But anyway, we had a good time, came back, and 6 months later, I took my wife to Africa.
For the first time?
That's not a good idea either, by the way. I was going home.
Was that the first time that she went?
That's the first time. She'd always felt she was going to be a missionary.
Okay.
But that was the first time she went. And she had never been there before, never heard drums in the night, never, had to fight cockroaches for her kitchen, anything else. So she was just trying to get used to it. We were there 10 months. We were there 11 months and moved 10 times.
Well, now, were you in CAR at the time?
I was in CAR. So I was a mechanic by trade. So I was in the Central African Republic, right in the heart of Africa. Draw a line from top to bottom, side to side. You're gonna hit in the CAR. So that's where we were. That's where I had grown up. The mission knew that I was a mechanic, so they put me to work right away. And she did language school. And then for the next month. So after language school, I think she took about 6 weeks for language school. She actually has better grammar in Songo than I do. She has better grammar in every language than I do. So, but anyway, we got on the plane to come home after those 11 months. And we sit down, my wife turns to me and she said, "Jim, we are not talking about Africa anymore in our home."
She was done, huh?
She was done. The mission didn't have things for her to do, and she was sewing curtains, showing sheets for the hospitals, doing different things, but they really hadn't thought it through. I had stuff to do on every station we went to. I worked on generator sets. I worked on light plants. Vehicles. I worked on airstrips, did all kinds of stuff. She just had to sit around.
New wife.
Yeah.
Nothing to do. Husband gone all the time working.
Yeah.
And you were probably more
doesn't like.
And you were completely fulfilled, right? Every day you were coming home excited.
I was, and I'm an early riser, and my wife is not. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
And
so Faye was basically looking at you saying, "Hey, I know that you're all go Africa, but I just can't hear it anymore." Like,
exactly.
Okay.
So we came home. Now understand, now we're visiting the churches and the people that had supported us for this year, because we had to raise our support, and everybody's saying, "Jim, when are you going back?" And I said, "Well, we're going to settle down for a while. I'm going to start seminary." So I crammed my 3-year seminary career into 6.
Wow.
And we started a family. We just said, okay, we're just going to enjoy life here and learn what God wants for us. 3 years later, my wife comes to me and says, "Jim, I'm ready to talk about Africa." I got up off the floor and said, "Could you repeat that, please?"
Africa, Ohio?
What's that?
Africa, Ohio?
Yeah. She said, "Look, Jim, from the day I told you that, God's been speaking to me, and I knew this was where we were going to go. I knew this was where you wanted to go. I just had to wrap my mind around it, and I have now, and we can start preparing." So we went to candidate school, we raised support, we did everything we needed to, and I graduated from seminary, and that summer we left for Africa again.
So I have a few questions for you. So I have 4 kids. 2 of my kids are on the mission field, one in Thailand, one in Southeast Asia.
Uh-huh.
And so very different look and feel for both of them. But what sending agency did you go through back then?
I went through the Grace Brethren mission. It's now called
Okay.
Encompass.
Mm-hmm.
And they because they knew me already, they knew what I could do. But I went out and I did not. So I asked the mission agency, I said, listen, if I'm going through on this, I want to go on to a small station because I know what happens to me. I get busy fixing everything else and fixing everybody's stuff. So I want to be on a small mission station, and I want to be able to concentrate on what I want to do, which was work with the youth. I wanted to train youth leaders.
So at this time, all of your mission work, current and pre in Africa, wasn't around water wells.
It wasn't around water wells.
Okay.
I didn't start that till I was 50 years old.
All right. And so that was about 8 years ago?
Well, wait a minute. 18 years ago.
18 years ago. Okay.
So 18 years ago,
how'd you get from missions through Encompass to Water for Good? What was the light bulb moment where you said, hey, this is what I should be doing?
Okay. Well, I'm a little hard-headed. I wear a hat. Maybe that's the problem. So I think God had been speaking to me for a while. So I had hunted with this well driller. I'd gone hunting. I'd taken my son. He'd taken his son. We'd gone hunting up in Batongafo. I loved to hunt. And I got to do so much stuff with him. We were good friends. So we had a couple of wars. This was about the third war in the CAR. So every term and a half for presidents, then some other president comes in and takes over, and there's a war, and sometimes there's a lot of destruction. Well, this particular war in 2002, every single one of our mission stations was destroyed. Homes were looted, destroyed. The mission could not do anything about it. I wasn't done with Africa, but the mission said, look, we can't do anymore. We've lost millions of dollars. Probably not billions, but millions of dollars. So every home was destroyed. They've actually taken care of one of them and rebuilt it. So that one's working pretty well. But the rest of the stations, we've turned them over to the National Church, and the National Church is working on. So the mission asked me to go back over one more time in 2003 to check on the people groups that we had really initiated work with. That was the Pygmies and the Fulani. So one of my missionary friends and I, Kim Cohn, went to Africa, and we visited the Fulani people down near the capital city. And the Fulani people are struggling with water issues because they have cattle. They're cattle herders. The villagers don't want the cattle anywhere close to them. So they're always trying to push them out further, just go out further. Get away from our gardens, get away from, our village. We just don't want you close. Therefore, they don't have any water. There's no water because we drill the wells close to a church, close to the people. So we're doing all that, and we're talking to these, and they said, if you would just drill a well for us, that would really help us. Just come out here and drill a well for us, and we will congregate around this well. So we noted that, and then we went down into the rainforest to the Pygmies. On the way down there, I met this friend of mine, Roland Marov. He had a well drilling rig. He had a well drilling base camp. He had equipment. He had supplies. And he was trying to get me to buy it. He had actually talked to me 3 different times. First of all, suggested that I could make payments on it. And when I drilled the well, I could make payment on it. Second, he said, just if you just give me this much money. So I just told him, I said, look, sir, do you realize that missionary and money have never been introduced? We don't know each other.
Yeah.
Help us out here. I don't have any money. I can't do anything. the things you want me to do. So this time, he said, okay, Jim, I'm going to give it to you for 1 symbolic franc. I'm going to give it to you. All you'll have to do is refund the money that I spent on the maintenance program. He was about $5,000 in hole for that. And anytime you drill a well, if you would please go ahead and pay me for the materials you use. So the steel casing, the PVC casing, the pump. I have pumps in stock. I have PVC casing. I have steel casing. When you use that, just pay me back with the money I've invested in that. And I said, well, okay, that sounds reasonable. Now, I still wasn't convinced, because what he said next was, you're going to have to start a nonprofit. The government is taxing me out of the business. I was going to have to close anyway. So the taxes on a for-profit business are so great that I cannot maintain it. So we're going to have to figure out so I was going to have to figure out not only how to drill water wells. I'd never drilled a water well in my life. I'd watched one drilled. He drilled one at one of our stations. I watched it drilled, but I'd never drilled a water well, and I'd never started a nonprofit. And I'm going, okay, you're asking me to do 2 things I've never done before in my life.
Sounds like you were perfectly qualified and equipped.
Yeah. All I was a mechanic. Right. He goes, you're the only guy that I know that could do this. Of all the missionaries, you're the only guy that could possibly do this. So get this. Now we're going on down to the Pygmies. Nobody's been down this road for 3 years. So we start down the road. There's a tree down. Now, I'm not talking about a little tree. It's probably 3 feet in diameter. We have a chainsaw with us. We finally get it cut out of the way, and we go around another corner. There's another tree down. That's a little bit smaller, probably 2 foot in diameter. I get that cut out of the way. And then we go around the 3rd corner, and there's another tree down. I said, okay, I parked the truck. I said, we're walking. Now, just FYI, we crossed 99 trees down.
Wow.
So it was a good thing we didn't try and keep going that way.
Wow.
So my friend and I just walked. We walked 23 miles in 6.5 hours. Now, why were we walking so fast? Because we were following 3 Pygmies, and they don't walk. They trot. I mean, they really do. They trot. They have this little gait, they're just kind of moving along, and you're trying to walk and keep up. And they were heading home, so they were anxious to get home, and we were just trying to keep up. But 6.5 hours, my friend and I are talking, Kim and I are talking, and Kim's going, Jim, this is a huge opportunity. Look, think what you could do. Think how you could help people. Think, this is really awesome. You could even do evangelism through water well drilling. I said, well, I get all that, but come on, I've never done this before. He goes, well, now's the time. I said, Kim, I'm 50 years old. You want me to start something brand new? How am I going to figure this out and get it done? So, he kept the whole way. We kept thinking, I kept throwing up roadblocks, and he kept saying, oh yeah, wait, you could do this. You really could do this, Jim. Come on. And we get down there, and he kept referring back to the Fulani because he speaks Fulbe. So he speaks their language. So he kept referring back to the Fulani, saying, hey, you could really help these people. And I go, yeah, but how many wells will they need? 1, 2, maybe 3. That's not, I'm not going to get a drill rig just because of that. So we're down there. It was the middle of the night. They woke up. The Pygmy village wakes up. They build a bonfire. They start dancing around the fire. They haven't seen anybody in 3 years. No missionary in 3 years, and they're just overjoyed to see us there.
Sounds like COVID.
They're just having a blast. And the problem was, they came to me during all this fun that we're having. They said, Jim, we usually collect rainwater and stuff for you. We have no water. You're going to have to walk down with us to the spring, which is really a seep, to get the water, because we don't have any water. So Kim and I, the next morning early, we walked down. We were just going to wash our face and hands at least. Well, we get to the edge of that. So it literally takes you an hour to walk down, an hour and a half to walk back up with a 5-gallon jug. If you're empty, you can just walk back up. We get down there, and Kim looks at me and says, I'm not even going to wash my hands in that water.
Mm.
And by the way, if you had the drill rig, you could fix this.
Mm.
Now, that's significant because I had already tried to help them hand dig a well there in the village. We dug it to 70 feet, and then there was no air down in because we were dropping culverts down.
You dug 70 feet by hand?
By hand, 70 feet by hand. And then we had to go back and get an air compressor because there was no, we'd let the lantern down and it would go out. So we had to go get an air compressor to push air down in there to actually have air so that guys could keep digging. We dug it to 100 feet deep. No water, not even damp.
How long did it take you to dig 100 feet?
Oh yeah. It was probably a 3-month project.
And no water.
No water. So
Gotta be so disheartening.
So they now I'm thinking through all this and I'm going, okay, all right. So we start back. Takes another 6.5 hours to go back, but now my attitude has changed. I'm saying, hey, if we did this, maybe we could do this, and how could we do this, and what are the other possibilities involved in this? So the first name of Water for Good used to be ICDI, Integrated Community Development International. We took care of orphans. We helped people learn how to protect themselves from AIDS. We did agricultural work, and we drilled wells and maintained wells. Now we've decided, okay, that was too wide because I had an accountant back in the day that said, Jim, you're spending more than you're making. You're always in the hole. You need to figure this out.
So you're officially qualified to be a U.S. congressman? No?
Exactly. So I came back. I talked to the mission about it, and the mission said, Jim, we do evangelism, we do church planning, and we do continued education like Bible schools and seminary. We don't do
water wells.
Mm-hmm. We don't do water wells. By the way, I like your mug there.
So mine is, I guess, 2 years ago, and you're using last year's official mug. This is you can see it on the bottom, Mud Love, for those that don't know the brand that might be watching this. And Mud Love is a really cool ceramics company out of Indiana, right, Jim?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's Jim's, and they do a collaboration with Water for Good every year. A lot of people would know Mud Love from the little bracelets that you'll see that have like a word of inspiration on them. But they do a mug collaboration with Water for Good every year, and Jim and the team have kept us in supply of those mugs, and we appreciate that.
Yep.
So Jim, I come from a drilling background. I started my career on oil drilling rigs and offshore, mainly on offshore platforms with the drilling department, drilling wells. So what was your learning curve for actually getting a rig? Like did the other owner, the previous owner, walk you through the process and teach you how to do it? And then like how did you get to the place where you could get the equipment, fix the equipment? Because if there's one thing I know about drilling, and like there's nothing that can be made that what we would call back in the day roughneck proof, but like everything breaks.
Everything.
So how did you handle the mechanical side of getting the parts, fixing the stuff, keeping that rig actually being effective? Because you've drilled how many wells?
Over I think 1,015 now.
Yeah, so 1,015 wells. Like you had to go through a ton of equipment.
That's putting it mildly, by the way.
Yeah.
So yeah. So what he did, so the former owner took me to Sweden. He's from Sweden. Took me to Sweden, and we drilled one well in Sweden. And then we went to Africa together. So I went back home, he went back home, and then he said, okay, meet me in Africa at this time. So we went to Africa. We drilled one well there. And then he said, Jim, you're good to go.
You got it.
And I said, but the thing that he did do is he had trained national staff. So we had national drillers, 2 men, Albert and Nicolas. And then they had a younger man named Marcelin Namsene. Marcelin is my son's age. So he's my son just had his birthday yesterday. He was 43. Marcelin is about the same age, 43. They grew up together. They're still good friends. And Marcelin was one of the drillers. He is really good. So I had this team, the staff, and I kept working with them and talking with them. We had to figure out systems to put in place, because there weren't, with a small drilling operation, it was pretty easy. As we grew, then we needed, okay, more gravel pack. We need 2 millimeter, we need 4 millimeter, we need 5 millimeter gravel pack. How are we going to get it sifted? How are we going to get it separated so it's actually working and doing what we need to do? And how can we have the amount of casing, steel casing, PVC casing, how can we have that in hand when we need it? So at the beginning, we had everything in hand. Now we don't, because we used up what Roland had for me. So now we're doing that, and we learned which kind of pumps we have. So we have another partner. So Luke Wright's brother, Abe Wright, has established an organization called Life Pump. You can look that up on the website, lifepump.org, I think it is. But they build deep well pumps. So we have some deep wells.
These are all hand pumps, right?
All hand pumps.
We're not talking about turning a switch and water coming out of a spout. You're talking they're pumping it.
Yeah. So these are Moino PCP, positive cavity pumps. It's what you use in the oil industry.
Yep.
They put a big electric motor on it, but we put cranks on it.
Mm-hmm.
But it will get water up deeper than any other hand pump or foot pump. Those will go to about maybe 180 feet, maybe 300 feet, but we've got wells that are 400 feet, 600 feet deep. So we have to have something deeper to get the water out. There's some places where water is very difficult. Most places we can get it somewhere around 180 feet to 200 feet. But there's some areas of the country that are really difficult. So Abe Wright and Luke Wright, 2 brothers, are just amazing, and they provide us with some of this. Abe actually is selling to a whole lot of other people, which has really helped his industry, because he left the orthopedic industry and now works especially with water pumps. He's a nonprofit now, so his money came from his previous job, not what he's doing now. So all that to say, it's hand pumps. We've now moved into solar. So if you look at our website, you'll see we're doing solar tank projects where we're putting up a steel tank, and then we're putting these are really, really interesting. We'll have a video pretty soon of them actually constructing one of these, because they actually put it together and they raise it up from the bottom. So they lay the thing on so there's one of those there. So those are built from the bottom up. So they have lifts that keep raising it up, and that makes it easier. You don't have to climb to the top to do it. They leave some holes in it. So there's a couple places, and then they fill it with sand because these are all gravity systems. They're not pressurized systems, they're gravity systems. We use a Grundfos pump to pump water into the tank, and that way we can actually use a chlorinator and actually pump it in and put chlorine in the water as it's actually going in. That's a little more sanitation for these people. The water is clean, it's good. I drink water right out of the pump. That's fine. I've never gotten sick drinking water there from any one of our, we have 1,900 pumps that we take care of. We've drilled, about 1,015, but we take care of other ones. So there's other pumps that other organizations have actually drilled, but then left the country and never set up a system of maintenance. So one of our criteria is any well we drill, we're going to take care of.
Let's talk about this model a little bit, Jim, because there's two things that you said earlier, and we're probably using a little insider language, right? Just from having, obviously.
I'm sorry, I do that.
No, you're fine. So I heard you say local or national. Let's talk a little bit about how typically, and I'm not asking us to criticize other mission agencies here, but let's just talk about the typical Western mission model and what usually happens when a Western organization comes to somewhere in Africa. What's that usually look like?
Usually we come in with our ideas of what kind of educational system should be there, what the level should be, and what evangelism should look like.
Right.
Now, so that's what we're doing. And what I did when I was there for the first 20 years was I did youth training and trained youth leaders of how to run their program. So we would go out for a camp, for a week-long camp, build our own campsite, and then work through the process of how they were going to take care of their young people as they grew up. And I saw the capacity of Central Africans. And that's what I built this model on.
So you saw what they can do and believe that if you invested in their capabilities, that they could run the show.
Exactly. And they're proving it.
And so when you say localized or nationals are drilling wells, what you're saying is men and women from Central African Republic, born in Central African Republic, citizens of Central African Republic, are solving the water crisis for Central African Republicans themselves.
All we needed to do was bring in some financing to help them with it. Even the villages can't always afford the maintenance call. So we support it. We still help it because we believe if we've given them water, it's a huge, good testimony to be able to keep the water flowing. It's a bad testimony on Water for Good or on anybody else if we don't keep it going, if the pump's just sitting there broken.
Well, why do they break? Like, what's the challenges in Africa with keeping a pump running? Typically, if it's not being maintained by someone who knows what they're doing.
Jeff, it's mechanical.
Yeah.
Tell us, is it a part issue? Is it because we know the African. We've seen the Africans' ability to find solutions, right? They can keep a bike tire in air longer than any human being on the face of the earth, right?
Yeah, and they can stuff it with grass when the bike tire won't hold air. Okay,
so why is it about the pump that?
There's some things that just are nearly impossible to fix because it's mechanical. It's something that they don't have there. So let me give you a couple examples. So there's a bladder in the bottom of the Vernier pump that is a rubber bladder, and that rubber bladder does break. It breaks down. So we have new ones that we take in, but I've stopped at a village, and I have one sitting right here that actually they took it apart, and they patched it with inner tube. So they took a truck tire inner tube, put glue on it, put it back together, put it back in, and it actually worked, not very well, but it worked. So
Right.
yes, they do, but they can't get the parts.
Yeah.
And they can't get the parts to their, so they come all the way down to the capital city, and maybe there's a part available, maybe there isn't.
Right.
So what we do is travel around with the parts and the maintenance team that knows exactly what to do and how to do it. We may have something on our website right now, but we're going to have a better one on our website soon that actually shows men doing a maintenance call.
Neat.
And just the parts they replace, how they replace it, how they do it, how the village actually helps with that. But we want to be able to have, because you see all those little dots, the green ones are working, the red ones are a problem. So something's wrong with it. We need to get to it. You'll notice the red ones are mostly in the northern part of the country, because right now, the northern part of the country, there are some issues with security because of rebel activity. Doesn't bother our teams. They just keep going, even though they're not. But we kind of restrict their travel so they don't get there as often as they should. Sometimes it's something that's wrong with the actual well.
Yeah.
So it's not a pump
You need the rig.
or it's a well. We need the rig to go back in and blow it out or re-drill it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's unique?
I got a question about the maintenance real quick. So change the bladder. Is that all at the surface so they can pull, or are they pulling it from the bottom up by hand?
Yep. From the bottom up, and it's a flexible, so it's 2 inch and 1.25 pipe.
Yep.
And they're flexible, so they can pull them right out. PVC pipe, they pull it right out. In the bottom is this section at the bottom.
Yeah, that's what.
And that section is where they get the water from. And there's check balls in it. And the Vernier company is in France. They're the ones that produce the well. We really like it because it'll work 6 months without maintenance. We need to at least be there 6 months. Every 6 months. Yeah. But if we're there every 6 months, it pretty much will work. Now they have our phone number, so they can call us and say it's broken. If a team is going out and swinging not far from them, they may be able to stop by and do something. But every team has a route and a number of villages that are on their route. And they're gone for 3 weeks at a time, just leaving home and working, and then they come back and they're home for a week. During that week, they restock their trucks and they get some rest time with their family, and then they're back on the road.
So I have a question, because I think, Jeff, to your question that you asked earlier, right? So the Western approach to missions in the last, I would say, 10 years has been a very impatient, fast-paced process. So, for instance, my daughter, who has spent, so when she decided she was going to go to the mission field, she had to complete a 2-year internship at the church. She had to then go to training in Mexico for a year, and then she had to come back and raise support for almost a year. So now she's 4 years in. They go actually get on the field. They're going to spend 2 years, 18 months learning the trade language, which is the language that all the people in the country typically speak. And then they're going to go and learn what they would call the love language, or the language that the people group they're going to plant a church. They got to go learn that language. So they're now going to be roughly about 7 years before they even learn the people group's language. They then have to produce an alphabet. They have to teach literacy. Then they have to start to transcribe the Bible into that language. So they're 10 years to 12 years before they ever even do what they want to do.
Yep.
Typically in the West, in the Western missions, if you can't get some kind of result within a year, nobody wants to support that. And so,
nobody wants to continue. There's very few people that understand. Yeah. But if they don't do that, then they're not going to be effective.
Right.
That's absolutely right. So how can you go without the language and speak to anybody at an adult level without being able to speak to them at adult level? And if you and I'm not saying this, look, I definitely don't want to bash any other processes or people or anything like that. It's just the way that it's like, look, you look at the way that God's word was given to us with excellence, perfection, like we should strive to give it to others in the same manner. That's where.
Yeah.
So.
Well,
and I grew up in the CAR, so I had that privilege. And I did language. My wife and I did language study afterwards when we went back to Africa. So we did 18 months. Mm-hmm. But because she was going back to a language that she knew, and we already knew, then we had 18 months of French language study. So we had the tools in place.
Right.
They have a trade language that's called Sango, and almost everybody speaks that. And they also have tribal languages. So SIL, Summer Institute of Linguistics, works on the trade languages, translating that. One of my father and Wayne Beaver, a couple of former missionaries, both passed away now, they helped translate the Bible into Sango. Now it's going into every other language as well, because it's the heart language of the people. Right. What you're said is very true, and they relate to that. And some of those, they've had to develop an alphabet. They've had to make it written. They've had to do so much to do it. I'm not good at that kind of stuff, So
you can drill a well.
I can drill a well. I can do mechanical work, but I can't do the rest.
Yeah.
So I'm just not able to do everything that they want me to do. And the mission sometimes, so we just had our 100-year anniversary of the mission in CAR. So this was a fantastic time for us to be there. And I really enjoyed the time to be there. And they asked me to speak there. So I spoke about my father, about Orville Jobson, who was one of my mentors and one of the early missionaries there. And I just talked about, okay, this is what I came out to do. For 20 years, I did this, but then God showed me that this was what I needed to do. I needed to help you people have clean water. Now, you often don't respect somebody who's not a missionary. So Africans have this, idea too. The missionary is the only really one that knows the gospel. And I said, well, so you don't think I know the gospel? Well, Jim, you're different. And I'm going, is that good or bad? What are you trying to tell me? And they go, Jim, you worked out here for 20 years. All of us have heard you preach at some point in one of our churches. So we know that you know God's word and you teach God's word. We also know that you care about the people.
Right.
And so we're listening to you because you care about the people. I said, okay, so these other nonprofits that are working here, because we have 4 nonprofits working in CAR that are founded by missionaries. I said, they're also trying to help you. And you need to understand that these people are really making a difference. Yes, they all have different skill sets, but they're taking their skill set and serving God and you as people here with it. So my message to the people there at the conference, and we had probably 20,000 people there at the conference. So a lot of people, and all of them came from all over the country, and then they all went back home. So that if they spoke at all about the conference, they would be speaking about the people who spoke there. And so I have confidence that people understand a whole lot more of who I am and why I do what I do, because they've gone back and told them, and they understand that I believe that we can add pride and integrity back in the lives of Central Africans by helping them. And when teams come out with me, I said, look, just don't touch anything. Don't do anything. What I want you to do is complement our national staff, our well drillers, our electricians, our mechanics, our maintenance guys on the good job that they're doing. If you add value to them by doing that, and they see an American that thinks they're doing a good job, they're going,
Yeah.
oh, okay, maybe I am doing a good job.
Wow.
And that's what we want to do, because that encourages them more than anything else we could do.
That's awesome, Jim. Jim, I want to pivot kind of and talk about for those that are watching this that don't understand water poverty and the effect water poverty has. Can we talk a little bit about what the typical life of someone in a village who does not have clean water looks like compared to someone who does? Some stats, maybe something we can something tangible we can put our minds around.
Okay, sure. Good question. Good question. Let me put it this way. The women and the young girls are the ones who haul the water. You very seldom see men hauling water.
Okay.
Sometimes young boys, but it's the women and the girls. Consequently, a girl will get up, doesn't have clean water. And I just talked to a girl this past trip. And she said, I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and have to make at least 2 trips to the water source, which is almost 2 kilometers, so a mile away, and then back with a 5-gallon jug, and then make a second trip because the family's going to use more water. My mom needs water.
Wow.
And I need to get back. Now it does get light at 5 o'clock, so there is light. So by that time, it's almost 3 hours later, and then I'm late for school.
How old's this girl?
This girl is 12 years old.
My daughter's age. Okay.
Okay.
Wow.
So she's hauling a 5-gallon jug on her head, balanced. Their balance is incredible. Just saying. A whole lot better than mine is. And she goes 5, 6, 7, 8. She may get back by 8, but then she needs to clean up, and then she needs to get ready for school. She gets to school, and the teacher won't let her in because she's late.
Hmm.
Right.
So it affects their education.
Yeah.
Because they have so far to walk, they don't get back to school. They don't get a good education. Because they don't get a good education, there's no opportunity. Now that it affects everybody in the home, because then she's not happy. But
Right.
then also the mom has to wait for water to come to boil water for coffee in the morning. You know, I have this little electric deal that heats up my water, and I have coffee ready. I don't have to go anywhere. I don't have to build a fire to heat the water. She has to build a fire. She has to pour the coffee in. She has to boil the water, and she has to have water and then she has to cook meals
Right.
all day long. Now they normally have what they call a makala. It's a little donut and a cup of coffee for about breakfast time. And then they have one meal about mid-afternoon. So let's say 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That's what they eat. They usually only have 2 meals a day. They don't really eat that many meals. Food is scarce. They're subsistent farmers. So they eat what they grow. If they don't grow it, they don't eat it.
Is that why they can't just move closer to the water source, because where they're farming this doesn't correlate with drinking water all the time?
Exactly. But also near the water is where there's more mosquitoes, more problems. So they live usually up on the hill and closer to the roads. So people live close to the road. The village may grow a little bit and grow down away from the road a little bit, but they can only sell stuff along the road.
Hmm.
So they want to have a house that's close to the road so that they have produce from their garden, then they can sell stuff alongside the road.
Right.
And that's their income stream. If they're going to pay for water, they're going to need an income stream. And we asked them to pay. We said, look, we want you to have skin in the game. If you don't have any skin in the game, you're not going to take care of the well, and you're not going to take care of the pump, and you're not going to care if it's broken. If you have skin in the game, then you're going to take care of it, and we need you taking care of it. We can't do that every 6 months. If you don't clean off the slab, keep it clean, it's going to be a sanitation problem, not a sanitation benefit.
Right, because your model is your maintenance teams of nationals who are, have this job, this micro business they're managing and running. Their compensation is coming from the villages that are paying for their service. So it's not Western money getting injected to keep these people in work. It's a sustainable model.
Yeah. Now, to be perfectly frank,
Yeah.
the villages don't pay enough. So they're not, if our maintenance teams depended solely on the money from the village, they would be quitting.
Okay. So you have
However, the solar tank projects are much more profitable. And we've started already probably close to, I think, 80 businesses of people that maintain those. So every tap stand has somebody and they have a specific price that they pay. The village pays. We give a little bit to the government. We give a little bit to the individual, and he makes some money on it. And some of it goes into a fund to be able to replace the solar pump, replace the panel, replace anything that goes bad. So that's actually working much, much better, but it's a model you can't use in a village that only has 250 people.
Right. How big does a village have to be for that to work?
It has to be at least 1,500 people.
And then what's the cost, if you don't mind, what's the cost to put in the solar pump, the tank, to do the maintenance of the sand and get everything done?
And you realize we're digging trenches to each one of the tap stands. So there are 3 feet deep trenches all around the village and we have to get permission from it's a nightmare.
Why you running trenches for piping?
Why do you do that? Walk us through the why behind multiple tap stands.
So we have multiple tap stands because the village is sometimes pretty long and pretty big. So we put sand in the bottom of that tank, and that provides gravity feed. So the gravity feed then feeds all these pumps. Well, I mean tap stand, sorry. So the tap stand then, there's 2 faucets at each tap stand. There's a meter on it, so we know exactly how much water went through that tap stand. We know how much water went through the whole main pump, so we can keep track of how much water is actually going and how much this tap stand manager owes us. And then a percentage of it is divided up. They go underground because otherwise the piping would be damaged. They would cut it, they would break it. And we put it deep because Africans don't like grass. So they clean off all their yards. The reason is scorpions, snakes, tarantulas, they're in the grass. So they clean them, keep it cleaned off so that they don't have that problem. Well, that means that when it rains, it washes away. And so we have to put it down far enough that it's not going to wash away. And then we're going all around in the village in different places. We have to ask permission with every house that we're going to put the pipe next to. Your pipe is going to run up here for that tap stand that's right below your house. Is that okay? And they have to sign a little paper. We just try and, go through all the steps, make sure everything's okay.
How much sand are you putting in the bottom of that tank? Because you're raising the bottom of the tank up so that you get the hydrostatic heat pressure.
So probably a third to half full, depending on how, because we have drones that actually tell us the levels of where we're going to be taking the water to. So we have a drone that actually gives us the elevation. So we calculate all that out. Believe me, I don't do it. There's somebody a whole lot smarter than I am that does all this stuff. My son being one of them. And we actually figure out, okay, how high does the water table need to be in order for us to get the right amount of gravity feed. But it saves all kinds of money not having to have it pressure feed.
Right, exactly.
And we don't use battery system. So it's panel. When the sun comes up, it pumps. When it goes down, it stops. And there's enough water in it to cover the time in between, because people come after dark even and get water. So we try and have enough water in there, and it's worked really well. There's only a couple tank projects where we had a little bit of problem. We put in a bigger pump, so we have a little bit more water at the end of the day. But so far, we've been able to handle that pretty well.
And so with the taps, well,
What's that? Oh, yes, cost.
One quick point. Hold on, just for efficiency's sake of the solar pumps. And I'm sorry, this is information I already know. I just want to bring it out. On a hand pump, there was still an issue. Let's just say a hand pump ran without failure, right?
Okay.
It's that efficiency issue of, if I understand correctly, one of the issues with hand pumps is you still end up with long lines and long wait times. So if you had a village of 500 and one hand pump, those girls, yes, they're not walking a mile to get water,
but they're still liable to be late unless they started early enough. Yeah,
because the lines for those hand pumps, right? How long does it take to pump 5 gallons of water with a hand pump or a foot pump? But with the tap stands, water's already in the tower. It's gravity fed. It's on demand essentially, right? And 7 or 8 tap stands around the village. 2 taps per tap stand. I imagine those lines have almost completely gone away, if not shortened drastically, right?
The people love them, and they're willing to wait. This is one thing that I've continued to learn in CAR. People are much more patient than Americans. Just saying.
Can't imagine.
So, I had an older lady when we were doing a maintenance call. Older lady standing there, and I went over and talked to her and said, "Okay, ma'am." Just before she got there, we had to, and she only had a little 2-gallon jug. But just before she got there, we had started the maintenance, and then it takes, 2 hours to do it properly. And so she's waiting all this time. And I said, "Are you okay waiting all this time?" She goes, "It's for water." "What do you mean?" "I need the water. It's no problem." And then I talked to a village that's going to get a solar tank project, but not there yet. I said, "You realize this is going to be probably 6 months before it's done?" They go, "Yeah, that's fine, but it's water."
Yeah.
Right now we have to go down to this spring that's not sanitary, not very good, and there's people throwing stuff in it. We'll wait. We'll wait as long as it takes.
All right. So to Alan's question,
yeah,
we've got a village, 3,000 people in it, right? So it's a big village.
Timeline from the time you break ground on the well, when do the people get water at the tap?
Probably 6 months.
Okay. And the cost for that 6 months of work is the tank, the taps, the piping, the trenches, the solar pump, the solar panel. What are we talking about?
$70,000.
70,000. And that 70,000 will take care of water for 1,500 and above.
Yeah, for 1,500 to 4,000, 4,500.
So on the low side, 70,000.
And that's 70,000, 70,000.
So on the low side, if the village is 1,500 people, that's just around $45 per person. And on the high side, if the village is 4,000 people, it's $17 per person.
Yeah.
So essentially,
that's for the initial install.
The initial install. Yep. Yeah. So if I make a gift to Water for Good for, let's just average that at $30, I'm ensuring clean drinking water for a human being in that village.
That's correct. We actually tell people $5 gives 1 African water for 1 year.
That's the long term.
On the long term, yes. Because we have 1,900 wells, almost 1 million people drinking our water every day from those pumps. Now we're adding solar systems, so it's going to go up. In fact, we anticipate in the next 5 years adding 650,000 people to that million.
Wow.
So we've discovered ways to make it more feasible to actually reach the people. Now there's 4.5 million people in the country.
Okay.
We're not done yet. We got a lot more to do, but we're trying to bring in partners that are helping us to do it and partnering with them. And the government now has signed an agreement with us and they want us to lead in a lot of these areas to help other people who want to drill well, have them check in with us. Okay, we want to put this hand pump in, we want to put this solar tank system in, and we're able to counsel with them. We actually have a French website now that they can go on and see where we're working and where they want to put in their next well, so that we're sharing the information with the whole country.
Wow. So CAR is one of the more challenging countries in the world to do work in, correct? Where do they fall on kind of that scale of difficulty?
Well, the South Sudan and us are fighting for bottom place.
In Africa.
Well, you got that going for you.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you can make it work in CAR,
we feel like we can probably make it work about anywhere.
Okay. And you're almost a fourth of the way there as far as the overall goal.
Well, we will be, probably, I would say not quite a fourth, but we're getting close, and we will be in 5 years. We'll be almost half.
Yeah. Wow. And I mean, we can look at that map that I had up earlier and see how saturated. I'll pull that back up. See if I can figure out how to do it here real quick. We can look at that map and say, oh no, I've already closed it off. But that map had a lot of the western part of the country looked like it was heavy in coverage on the western part of the country. Yeah. And so now I would assume you're moving towards the central and then ultimately the east.
East, yeah. Okay. Here's the thing. The eastern part of the country is a lot less populated. When we get the western part, the western half, we will have 3/4 of the population.
I see.
So
I also noticed that you're on the roads, like your wells are on the roads. These tank facilities are going to change that, right? You're going to move more into being able to be off the road, or I'm assuming maybe all the population is on the road.
They're on the roads. They're all on the roads. So we're going to have to, okay. So here's a fact point. So I asked my son. I said, okay, Jay, you know where we've drilled wells. You know where their wells are located. So how many wells are located where a church is located? He says, Dad, that's the wrong question. I said, all right, what's the right question? He said, it's going to be a whole lot more feasible for you to tell me for me to tell you how many wells are not close to a church. I said, okay, how many? 5. So the people are in villages where there's churches, where there's a road to get there.
Right.
If there's no road to get there, they don't. Now, the bigger cities, have a bunch of roads through it, but there's still roads. And people like I said before, people like to live close to the road because then they can sell produce from their gardens.
Yeah, their commerce is there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, it sounds like just absolutely incredible work that you've gotten to be part of, Jim, your whole life. And I can't imagine how exciting the last 15 years have been. I had the joy, Jim, of reading the book that you published here in the last year and a half, I think, One Drop of Water. Can you tell us a little bit about where the proceeds, if somebody buys this book, where the proceeds go and the mission of, I guess, is it a legacy foundation in your name?
Yeah, it is. What we're trying to do is build up this legacy fund to help with the maintenance costs long term.
Okay.
So every dollar that's given doesn't go to me, doesn't go to Water for Good. It goes into a fund that is going to be an endowment fund that is going to be used to continue to fund this forever. So people have, asked me a bunch of questions about that, and I said what we were trying to do, and I told them I don't need any money for this, please. What I want with all my heart is for the maintenance to continue forever, and the only way to do that is to have a fund that will continue to build up to continue to be able to do that. Now, I'm not I'm not thinking that we're going to sell enough books for that, but I actually had somebody that just told me that they're going to, in their will, they're giving me $100,000 towards this fund. When they pass, they're another 100. So I think that's where we're going to get more funding. $20 a book is probably not. I'm not going to sell that many books.
Well, I'm going to make a commitment to the first 10 people that message me. Use LinkedIn and message me. I'll send you one of these books, and so they'll get to make a $20 gift to the fund. We'll make that gift in your name, and I highly recommend you read it. You know what I love about this book, Jim? It is the perfect length to read on a plane. It is you can, from the time you sit down in your seat to the time you land, and then your trip back. It's a 3-hour read, right? I mean, and there's some incredible stories in this, pictures of you out in the field, and just anyway, it's a great way to get to know you better and hear how God has used your life, your faithfulness and obedience to impact 1 million people, if not more. I want to kind of, as we start to wrap, there was a stat that I had learned, and I think this was from Living Water, that if water poverty disappeared today, half of the world's hospital beds. Now, this is a non-COVID stat, okay? So I'm sure COVID has skewed this. But pre-COVID, half of the world's hospital beds would be emptied immediately. So half of our healthcare capacity globally is due to waterborne illness. Yeah.
Hey, Jim, as we leave, I just want to give you a chance to talk about something that, like, for me, it's something I talk about on a regular basis because I have kids who have left the United States with small kids, grandkids. 6 of my 7 are all in overseas.
Wow.
But talk about the reality for you growing up as a child with a missionary parent, and then for your kids, what was the impact to your kids and how your kids have responded to that life of being really a life of watching their parents serve other people?
Yeah. So my oldest son, and I wouldn't hire any of these of my kids. I told Water for Good, I said, I'm not going to do that. If you want to hire him, that's fine. So the CEO, the previous CEO, not John Allen, but Rich Klopp, hired my son Jay. He's now our operations manager full-time. My daughter does translation work for Water for Good. They hired her. My next son, Joel, actually does all the computer and IT work for Water for Good. So I say that just to show you they've all engaged in not only the mission work and reaching out to people, but also in actually serving Water for Good in capacities that we didn't have any way to fill.
Right.
Hey, listen, I need to go use a restroom if you don't mind.
Well, no, I think it's about time to break. And Jim, yeah, too much coffee, right?
Yeah, too much coffee. It was too much coffee.
68 years of bladderware will get you every time. Well,
okay.
Jim, thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much. This was awesome. And I hope we can do it again.
Absolutely. We'll talk to you more later.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. So, Alan, thanks for giving Jim space to come on. And I hope that inspired you the way that it has inspired me in the past.
Love it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the foundations that we have set out to do with Integrate Live, right? To serve people in this community, to make it more about the success and betterment of the individuals and the companies they work for. And so, yeah, it perfectly aligns with our heart for what we want to do, and in humility and service. So, yeah, love it.
Well, and just to kind of remind everybody that, or maybe you weren't with us on our last virtual workshop or rundown, But Water for Good is one of the organizations that we're going to financially back. So as income comes into Integrate Live through sponsorships, so Software Toolbox, our first sponsor, we're taking 10% of all of those sponsorships, and we are immediately making a gift to Water for Good with that money. So that simply means that as we grow, we will be helping Water for Good grow in their mission. And so we all get to be part of that. And it's going to be really exciting to see how we can continue to work Water for Good and other agencies, other causes, other nonprofits that are doing work around the world in service and matching our vision. We're going to continue to try to find ways to fund them and to join them in that mission work. Yeah. Well, Alan, should we wrap for the day?
Let's do it.
All right. Well, everybody, thank you. And Alan, hope you have a great day. We look forward to coming together May the 11th. That's not this Wednesday, but is that next Wednesday already?
A week from Wednesday.
Okay. May the 11th, our next virtual workshop. It feels like they're happening faster than we can keep track of them right now. And who's on that one?
That's going to be Benson, Kevin,
Okay.
David. So you've got, Arlen's going to be there.
Okay.
Right. So, Opto 22, we're going to be doing something that's very near and dear to my heart, which is the vision I had to be able to protect legacy equipment internally, not just, it turned into be something way bigger than it actually is. But my goal with it was always, we followed the Purdue model, but we always had this issue of, we had this hardened outside bubble of security, but the moment you could break through that bubble, everything in the middle was mushy and soft, and you could then get to any critical equipment if you could just break through the outside barrier. So how do we protect these 5,000 PLCs that are, legacy PLCs? So we created, working with Opto, the ability to put a device inside a PLC cabinet that would give you a level of security, and it's a control system device. It's a hardened device, and so very excited about it.
Okay. Well, stay tuned for next Wednesday's virtual workshop, and you can hit integratelive.com, our website, in order to register, or look on our Facebook. I'm sorry, Facebook. Geez, we don't have Facebook. Look on our LinkedIn. I need another cup of coffee. Let's look on our LinkedIn group, or our LinkedIn page for that info. All right, everybody. Have a great week, and we look forward to talking to you soon.